let's start, because Kieran, we've got you for a half hour. So we want to start with what's happening in the House. And one of the stories from the House this week, which we'd love to touch base on with people, is Tamatha Paul. What I'll just do is I'll just play a little bit of audio and video first of all to set the scene, and then let's have a chat. So this was Tamatha in the, what do you call this, Kieran? I was going to say the house. This is like the foyer of the house, yeah?
Tiles.
Yeah, it's an area called the Tiles. Yeah, it's a little foyer that ministers have to walk through to get from their offices to the House, and that's where the media congregate.
Yeah. So the politicians are literally on the tiles every day, like figuratively and literally, maybe. Anyway. So this is Tamatha. She's on 3 News, and she gets asked some comments that she made, I believe, in sort of a panel for the university about police and what's happening in Wellington. And this is what she had to say.
I believe we should defund the police altogether. I think there are some functions that the police are currently carrying out that other people would be better suited at.
It's la-la land stuff.
I think that the police should be responding to incidences of domestic violence, sexual violence, things that only they can do. I think beat patrols is an easy thing that can be substituted for by Māori wardens, by hapai ake kind of community people walking around, which we have in Wellington, and I think they should focus on their core business.
Paul has the backing of her co-leader, who says people feel unsafe around police.
I can tell you that there are constituents who I do deal with, namely those who are currently experiencing homelessness, who absolutely feel that way.
Labor not lending any leniency to its partners on the left.
I thought that Tamatha Paul's comments were ill-informed, were unwise, and in fact were stupid.
Chris,
so there's another part to this. So that's one part of the conversation that Tamatha Paul's been quoted on. The other part is when she was talking more to what she is being told. We hear that is happening to homeless people in Wellington as well.
So one of the big complaints I heard last year especially was around beat patrols just picking up homeless people's stuff and putting it in the bin. When I inquired about it, they said that that was because it was a Wellington City Council bylaw, and I don't think that that should be what they're dedicating their resource towards.
Leading to a pile-on from the government.
Oh, look, I thought it was quite outrageous and insane, to be honest. It's just weird, to be honest.
Really, she's for anarchy.
Really divorced from reality.
Paul is the Green.
So they're the first 2 comments I want to play. So we can talk about. There are some more things to get to as well, but that's the first 2 parts. It seems to me, and what I thought we could do is if we can get to an agreement basically of what's been said, then we can bounce off that and go, what do we think about that? It seems to me that what she's saying is it's been said to her by some of her constituents that they feel less safe when there's more police around. That seems to be the first point she's making. The second point, it says she's having reported to her that some homeless people are having their belongings picked up and put in the bin, which appears to be a Wellington City Council bylaw. Do we all agree that that's sort of what she's been saying? Are those the 2 points that have been mulled over today, or does anyone want to add to that?
Well, I'll add this, and actually I agree with you. I think there are some functions that the police are supposed to carry out, don't carry out, and ought not to be carried out. And those are welfare checks. Those are that is dealing with people who have very complex mental health needs. And when we say we want to defund the police, what we want is we want a shift of resources from one area of so-called expertise to another area of expertise. So I think that's the other very important point that Tamatha was making, which I support.
Yeah. Anyone else jumping on that?
Well, I mean, the comments that were in that story are one thing, and I agree with the underlying theme here that there are 100% people in New Zealand that, for societal, historical, and cultural reasons, have grounds not to trust the police. And also, I agree that there is a call, and certainly in some communities, to adequately resource the likes of the Māori wardens to perform a supplementary role in addition to the police. But I don't agree with defunding the police in order to achieve that.
Do we think that, I mean, one of the problems the left had in America is they use that phrase defund the police, which got interpreted as, and I understand why, meaning take all money away from police, whereas that's not what was being called for. What was being called for is reallocate some of the funding to police to people like mental health workers, because they could serve a better purpose in a particular situation. Is it just I guess what I would like to know, maybe you can answer this, Kieran, is we know that. I mean, surely Chippy knows that as well, that no one's saying let's abolish the police completely. It's a call for reallocation of some funds to make actually the money work better. Isn't that what that phrase actually means, albeit a clunky way of saying it?
Well, I mean, you can only go by words that are said, and I didn't know that. And so I imagine there are many other people that don't know the background to the use of that phrase. I mean,
Okay.
I'm looking at this from, a member of parliament who engages with the police and engages with all aspects of society and hears a range of views. So I'm certainly aware of the concerns amongst some, a small part, but nevertheless, it's worth acknowledging that don't trust the police. I live in a rural area that don't have enough police resources.
Yeah.
So I'm never going to advocate for defunding the police. But what I will do is advocate for additional resources to the likes of the Māori wardens, who I've seen firsthand have played an integral part in de-escalating critical situations that could have got very bad because of their standing and mana and connections in the community. And so, but the thing is that this has become this massive, complex, nuanced yarn about do you agree with it or not. There's so many points that are being made, some of which many people would agree with, some of which some would not, that it's not as simple as saying, yeah, I agree with Tamatha Paul or I don't.
If I can just jump in here, it wasn't simply a matter of Hipkins saying that he does not agree with Tamatha Paul. He came out and called her whakaaro stupid, which, if I can add, is actually extremely gendered language, along with calling her insane and in La La Land. This is actually relying on stereotypes of women being irrational and emotional and incapable of forming reasoned arguments. So, and this is actually this is a continuation of Labour's support on these so-called tough on crime policies that have failed time and time again. We talk about the definition of insanity. That's repeating policies that have failed time and time again and expecting something different. And when it comes to Labour, they've said that they want to support to keep the gang patch legislation, for example. And the gang patch legislation has resulted in military checkpoints outside of Tangi for Māori. So for them to say that they support this, and for this, what I would call an authoritarian attack on her ability to criticize the state and to say something that's extremely mild and to receive that vicious response, I think it does signal that we are shifting to a greater police state and that Labour is going to double down on that, which they've signalled in numerous ways.
Well,
I don't think Chippy actually said that the Tamatha was in La La Land. I believe that was actually Mark Mitchell, or as we like to call him on this show, Mark Mitchell, who basically used those terms. And you're absolutely right. There was a lot of gendered language, but I don't think it was coming from Chippy at the time.
He said
can I make a point, which is sort of at the risk of saying this? Why can't we have both? We're currently 71 police short of where we were at the last election, right? We've got a target of having 500 more police. We're miles away from that particular target. We also need more emergency housing. We also need more mental health spending. We also need more drug and alcohol, counselling, right? None of these things are forthcoming from this government. All of those things would support people right now, right? But we're having this conversation, right, rather than having the conversation we should be having, right, which is that meth use has doubled in the last year, right? We're not having the conversation about the fact that violent crime is up 9%. Violent crime under their category, right, from 2 years ago. We're not having a conversation about getting people into emergency housing when the government chucked tens of thousands of people out of emergency housing and doesn't know where they're going, right? There's plenty of things here, right, for us to get into, right? Whether or not Tamatha said the right thing or the wrong thing, kind of right? We can all have an argument about whether or not the police are liked or not. I come from the northeast of England. Trust me, coal mining villages were not big fans of the coppers, at various points in time. But
this is the conversation Tamatha wanted to have.
Great. In which case, we should be having that conversation.
Yeah.
But instead, they called her stupid.
Well, hang on. Let's just give Kieran a chance, because there's been some big words there about what Labor does and thinks does. Kieran, you've got every right to reply and share some thoughts.
Yeah. Look, the way I approach politics is you criticise or respond to what people say. You don't attack the person. And I acknowledge the comments that disagree with what Chippy said, and I stand by him. in criticising the ideas. But what I don't stand by is the Prime Minister actually attacking Tamatha and calling her insane. That's not on. That is not on. And I actually acknowledge the points that you were making in terms of attacking Tamatha and who ultimately was putting forward her view. And you shouldn't have a crack at the person. But just in response to the comments about the gang patch, we haven't said we support it. We opposed it vigorously. It's an absolute waste of police resources and time. But what we have said is, look, well, it's in now. Let's wait and see how it plays out. But we haven't committed to keeping it. But with the greatest respect, it's not the same. We've opposed it. We voted against it, and we're trying to channel our focus into the key things that we see affecting working people. And we're going to have a manifesto that touches on every aspect of policy across the board, but we're going to be focusing our attention on certain areas. It doesn't mean that we support it, and it doesn't mean we're going to keep it.
Can I just say a couple of things here? Mark Mitchell, the hypocrisy falls out of his mouth. Who's defunding the police right now in 2025? Mark Mitchell is 71 less cops on the beat. He moved a whole bunch of cops from Auckland to the CBD, because of the political pressure, but that means less people being supported in critical areas that aren't in fact the CBD. They're the Mangere, they're the Otara, they're the Papatoetoe. I think 140 back office skivvies have been ousted in terms of their jobs. If they're not doing the administrative jobs, who's doing it? It's the Bobby on the beat. Who's defunded the police? The Nats have defunded the police. That's the reality.
I want to have a look just to make sure we're on the same page again. One of the things Tamatha was talking about is hearing from constituents that feel less safe when there's more police around. And I don't have a list of who said what about that response, but I certainly know that the government, pretty much came out attacking her on that. And the thing that's interesting to me is the police say that. The police have research and their own reports that say that communities most at risk see police as threat, report finds. Police systems, processes, cumulative experiences are still getting in the way of fair and equitable policing, according to a new report. An independent panel has been researching police engagement with Māori, Pacifica, disabled people and rainbow communities. The 85-page report is the second from the Understanding Policing Delivery panel. The first, released in August, relied on existing police data, found Māori men were more likely to be stopped, tased and prosecuted by police due to bias and structural racism. One last comment, which I think is important from this report. The referencing back to what Tamatha said, the communities most at risk do not feel they were well served by police, instead seeing them as a threat to their safety. Childhood police interactions in particular were seen as compound ongoing distrust in police. So what she's saying there is accurate. And I wonder, Kieran, is there, I guess I kind of, when I heard what Chippy said about it was a stupid comment, I was just wondering, maybe I'm being a bit pedantic, is there a way of supporting the premise of what Tamatha was saying? Because what that's saying is accurate without sort of not necessarily he piled on, but the adding to the pile on, maybe, is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, and we run the risk, of course, if I comment on this, then we may well add to it further. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are watching this that might wish to report on it. But so I want to be really clear. I've the utmost respect for Tamatha Paul. I work alongside her. She's the Greens housing spokesperson. I'm the Labour Party housing spokesperson. We work together in opposing what the government is doing in essentially making people homeless. So I'm just going to stick to the fact that this is a very nuanced situation, that if we pull back from what happened in last week, do I agree that there are some people in the community that don't trust or fear the police? Absolutely. And as you've said, they recognise that themselves. The drive when we were in government to recruit 1,800 additional police, there was a massive focus on diversity to make sure that the incoming police force reflected the community that they served. That was the first time that that's ever happened. And so beyond that, I don't really want to add to what some of those others were saying that were attacking Tamatha. I'm just not going to buy into that. She's got a view and she's expressed it. I've got while I agree on the fundamental points, it's not how I would have communicated it. And coming as a representative that lives in a provincial area, I want to see more resources for the police and more resources for those that support them. And that's my position.
Can I jump back in?
Yeah,
and
go,
just
Simone.
clarify that Labor, that Hipkins did explicitly come out and say that he was going to keep the gang patch legislation. So sure, I can concede that they didn't support it at the time that it was passed, but they are going to keep this legislation, which is extremely harmful and breaches basic human rights and freedom of speech. And secondly, Indigenous, the Maori women represent the most incarcerated Indigenous women in the whole world. So, and those statistics are also very bad for Maori men. So the gall of Labour, who, by the way, oversaw those statistics with even a slight increase from 60 to 63%, to then come out and say that that Tamatha Paul, as a Maori woman and as a representative of those constituents, can't even come and speak the basic truth to the reality that they're experiencing, not only being overrepresented in prisons, but also overrepresented in being beaten up by the police with batons, with dogs, and with tasers. It's just biggest belief that they would now come out and attack her in this way. And it goes to show that, in my view, Labour is not part of the left. They're not allies of the left, and I would never categorize them as such.
Well, can I say,
Hang on.
you know,
I think you should give Kieran just at least a chance to respond.
I'd like to say one quick thing, please. When the brothers stop wearing swastikas and Nazi regalia in this very fractured world, I will be more supportive of them. They need to cut that shit out.
Kieran?
It's not working.
Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, what makes this show great and the way that we conduct politics and democracy in this country is that we have views. I mean, no one's expecting me to agree with that, but I'm pleased to be on a panel where we can have a discussion about it. At the end of the day, we all want to see this a one-term government. I obviously think that Labour Party is quite clearly encamped in the left. We are born of the trade union movement. We exist to support working people in this country. That's why I joined the party. We might have disagreements on certain aspects, but we will never support a national-led government. We will never work with ACT. And unless New Zealand first fundamentally change their current approach, I think it's highly unlikely we'll ever work with them. So at the end of the day, the Greens, Te Pāti Māori and Labour, we have a common objective, and that's to make this a one-term government, and we work really hard every day to achieve that.
Can I ask you a question, Samar? You just said that you didn't consider Labour to be part of the left. I mean, I do. Where's your line? Like, what does someone have to do to then no longer be a part of the left? Like, what are the must-dos to stay on the left, so to speak?
Just advocate for the interests of the working class people. And that's not what Labour does. They oversaw a crisis in COVID. And what did they do? They transferred a whole bunch of wealth to already rich people and cemented inequality in this country. And again, when it comes to the so-called tough on crime policies, what did they do? They brought in this ram raid bill, which actually lowered the age of prosecution for some children to as young as 12 years old. I could give countless examples of the way that they've thrown working and poor people under the bus. So I think the line, to be honest, it's not that high. But Labour has been miserably failing again and again and again. And every time they're in power, they fail to do anything transformational. So why should we trust that they're on the left? They've also never given a cabinet position to the Greens. And you look at how the National treats the right-wing parties, they give them power over the whole government. And so you can see that they can empower minor parties if they wanted to, and they choose not to.
Craig, you want to jump in?
If I may, sort of, forgive me, Sam. During COVID, we saved 20,000 lives as a consequence of the actions of the Labour government. We saved thousands of jobs and hundreds of businesses. We kept the economy going, right? We did all the things right, right? I don't believe any of that is not in the interests of working people. We lifted tens of thousands of children out of child poverty with the Families Package, with the changes in 2021, right? We did all of that, which is in the interests of working people. We delivered fair pay agreements. They were late, but we delivered fair pay agreements in the interests of working people. We saw the living wage rise above inflation every year, again, in the interests of working people. I work for the trade union movement. My job is to make sure that those who don't have a voice, those who feel powerless at work, those who live in communities where they're losing jobs, have fear about their future, that we give them voice. And we do that through the Labour Party. That is the political arm of the trade union movement. And
I have a love and sometimes... Sorry, Craig.
Sorry, Shane. So
No,
there's plenty of things that have been done over the past Labour government and over previous governments, working for families, KiwiSaver, so much which has changed the landscape positively of this country, right? To say that the Labour Party is not part of the left, I'm sorry, that's just not true.
And look, I have a love and not so much love relationship with the Labour Party. There've been times where I've, particularly during Rogernomics, but the other thing is that every single socially progressive thing that we live in our society came from the Labour Party, with the work of the Greens, with the work of the Alliance, 4 weeks annual leave, homosexual law reform, the establishment, actually, of, let's go back, the establishment of the Treaty Tribunal. These are things that have come from the left, and far from perfect. I want to push it further to the left. I want a fairer tax system. I want a system by which everyone is taxed equally. So if you're my brother is on minimum wage, he gets taxed. If you're a landlord like I am and I make a profit, I ought to be taxed. So there's a lot of mahi that we need to do, but the reality is, at the end of the day, I don't see much other option than a national-led coalition or a Labour-led coalition. And my gosh, at the year of this government, I've had enough. Even a bad Labour government is better than these folks that we've currently got in now.
And look, I can agree with that. I can agree that Labour is slightly better than National. They often give us crumbs. The way that I describe it is that National comes around, it beats us up and convinces us that we deserve the very little crumbs that Labour gives us. And that's what happens time and time again. And I agree that Labour is going to be better than National, but my argument is that we lose nothing from voting for Greens into Party Māori. Absolutely nothing, because we know that they're going to align with Labour and they're going to push Labour further to the left.
Kieran, we're at past, and you said you had a half hour, but I feel like the conversation has sort of wound to talking about Labour and Labour policies as well, so it feels only right and proper to give you the last word before we say see you later and thanks for your time tonight. Yeah,
thank you. And I'm sorry I have to go. I'm actually quite enjoying the yarn. It's an important conversation to have.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, politics is changing in this country like it is around the world. Politics is becoming quite volatile. You've got a prospect of one-term governments happening in other places around the world, and it may well happen here. I think debate internally or even amongst allies like this is incredibly helpful. We're not actually at odds in terms of the fundamentals that drive us. We have disagreements in terms of how it is applied practically and in practice. But I think at no point in what has been a really interesting discussion has there been anything that would think that we don't have the common objective of making this a one-term government. This national-led government, alongside which is being influenced disproportionately by ACT and New Zealand First, is consciously looking for distractions to take attention away from what it is that they're doing. They are driving division amongst our society, and they are causing hardship to those who can least afford it for the sake of reducing spending. And emergency housing is the prime example of that. They swear black and blue that their policies aren't hurting people, yet the people that actually know, those on the front line, are telling the truth that it's the opposite. And the only thing that drives them is to reduce spending. Now, I'm quite happy to take flack from parties on our left, but at the end of the day, we've got to change the government together.